Hello, my name is Ryan Olestro, and I want to talk to you about how I brought in about 15x pipeline for ad spend in about 8 months for a company kind of in the HR space using Google Ads. What I really focused on was that using Google Ads audiences to hone in on just the B2B buyers that we were targeting. Now, it took a couple of months to get this going. First 2 or 3 months, we weren't seeing anything. And then it started to pick up with some great 5-figure deals coming through the pipeline attributed to non brand keywords in Google Ads. Um, this was really a big thing that we had to do was just make sure we mapped the keywords all the way to the up and closed won level. That way, once you have marketing ops set up, we were able just to track that and really refine. The best part about this is that we did this on a very low budget. We only had 5K a month to spend on Google Ads, and yet it brought in over roughly around like 700K in pipeline. And if that sounds interesting to you, keep listening, and we're going to talk about how to implement exactly what I did to do this.
If that resonates with you, listen along. Also, check out our other episodes. You're listening to TLDR, the B2B SaaS growth podcast brought to you by Spear Growth. The goal of the podcast is to enable you, our listeners, to generate an additional $100,000 in cumulative pipeline by May 2024. To do this, we bring people who have made a real impact in their companies. They cut through the fluff and dive deep into one tactic or strategy of theirs. I'm your host Ishan. Let's generate pipeline. Hi Ryan, it's so nice to have you here. I know we've been chatting for 5-10 minutes, but obviously, like everyone, we've been in the same space. We run ads, you run ads. It's really interesting to always hear how others have been using ads to make things work, and the results that you've gotten for the HR tech company sound amazing. So thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Hey, thanks for the invite, Ishan. Happy to be here. I've been listening to your podcast and I've been taking notes myself, so this is great to be on.
I really appreciate that, man. Ryan, so is there a how about this? Right? Could you maybe in 2-3 lines just introduce yourself, like your career in short, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, you got it. So my name is Ryan Olestro. I'm a senior performance marketing manager at Refine Labs, and we help B2B SaaS tech companies with their demand gen. So that means performance marketing on demand capture channels like Google or Bing or review sites, do a lot of demand creation on social media platforms like LinkedIn, Meta, doing a lot of YouTube, doing CTV, wherever the demand is, wherever the audience is, that's where we want to go and really build up your company. So really looking to help companies, dominate their categories.
Awesome, sounds amazing. So just very quickly, right? So can you tell me a little more about the account setup that was there? Because I want to get into the audiences, but I also want to understand what did the rest of the account look like, and which
Yeah.
regions, and a little bit of background before we get there.
Yeah. So this is a unique situation. Sometimes B2B businesses are in it, sometimes they're not. It just depends how niche the product is. This company had a product with a huge TAM. But the
Mhm.
problem is that it also has a B2C element. A lot of just individuals were looking for it. So huge
Mhm.
search volume. We're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions. But how do you pick out the people who actually want your software from the person who just wants a thing?
Yeah.
Um, so when I took over the account, they had 900 leads from Google Ads over the last 12 months. Zero of them turned into a customer. Zero. So at that point, I knew two things. I knew that they weren't tracking, or that they had tracking all the way through the funnel, but they
Mhm.
just didn't know how to tie it back in and to feed that feedback loop.
Mhm.
So I had to rebuild from scratch. I only had, I think, a total of 5 campaigns, real tight. So almost always build the brand campaign just to defend against competitors. They weren't that big. They were kind of like a come up brand, but you never know. Um, and then we had two campaigns that were basically equal, but broken up by geos. And we took two big themes and we started testing it and refined it, and then we took it to two other campaigns. The big kind of unlock here was when we tightened up the keywords and we
Mm-hmm.
put in the Google Ads audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And to be very specific with you, usually when we build out these campaigns, you put in some audiences, you set it to observe, and you go, okay, let me see how this plays out, and then over time, maybe we make some bid adjustments. There was too much search volume for that. It was
Yeah.
too much expensive search volume. We're talking $30 clicks. What we did was we went straight to audiences intent
Mm-hmm.
for about 5 to 8 relevant audiences, and we tightened up the keywords to maybe 15 total. Early on, it was not looking great. I'm not gonna lie to you, Sean. It was the goal was to manage expectations, and so oh, we got a conversion. Oh, it was brand. Oh, we got a conversion. It was brand again. 2 months go by until the first five-figure op comes in through non-brand keyword, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now we're here. um, that really allowed us to shift the budgeting a little bit towards the keywords that we knew were going to work. And that eventually just started finding its rhythm. And you run Google Ads, once you
Yep.
get the campaigns into a rhythm, A, it's a really great feeling. And B, your client loves it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much easier to manage the account, optimize the account, and do experiments and expand or whatever you'd like to do. So that I started that process in about April, May, and
Mm-hmm.
then by the end of the year, through the ops that were coming in, some small, some large, brought in high six figures of pipeline, roughly around 700 k through 5K a month, even sometimes less than 5K.
So the
Uh,
budget wasn't increasing as you were getting, even after you were
mm-mm.
getting results. Okay.
No, so here's a little bit of the danger of this strategy, right? By focusing on these audiences, you really crush search volume. So your ceiling, you hit the ceiling. There were some months we didn't even spend 5K.
Mm-hmm.
We spent like 3 and 4, but we got a couple ops that were,
Yeah.
20, 30K. And then we just started building from there. Um, so it was a great lesson. Um, One that I think people could take to their accounts and think, hey, I have a lot of individuals searching. I need to
Mm-hmm.
cut them out quickly so I can learn. I would absolutely advocate for this strategy.
Awesome. So I'll ask very specific questions, right? Because
Hmm.
on the surface, yeah, everyone can do this, but I think the details matter in stuff like this, right? So at I think you said $5,000 was the budget, $30 was the cost per click. So you're getting like what, 150 non-branded, because you're also running brand, 150 clicks a month, which
Yeah.
is not a lot to do anything with, right? Like you cannot get enough data to do stuff. So yeah, it took 2-3 months before you could, which makes sense. Makes total sense actually. Now from there, let's say you said that you had 15 keywords there, right? So were these 15 in like broad, exact phrase, like?
Yeah. They started in phrase and I quickly put them to exact just because, they were pulling in too much. You know, you'll find PPC people on both sides who I start with exact or I start with phrase. I see both sides, and
Mhm.
usually I just pick the best choice at that time.
Yeah.
So I'll usually lean towards phrase, and
Yep.
then once it gets bad, I'm like, okay, I need to cap it in. Um, and so this with this particular phrase and these phrases, they were just bringing in a lot of garbage.
Yep.
So really putting in an exact match, changing the bids by device to knock out mobile, setting up your ad schedule, right? So you're not showing ads in the middle of the night for people who, are sitting in their bed, maybe,
Mhm.
doing whatever they're doing, searching your keywords by accident or on purpose. So yeah, it was, I changed it to exact match keywords.
Understood. So I think I've run. We have had a lot of clients in the HR tech space, and I completely understand that. Hey, I had to move them to exact match. That's happened to us very often. So perfect. So I think one important thing to note, and just let me know if it's wrong. Like you won't normally do this, as you've also mentioned, right? The only reason you did this was there was a lot of traffic, and most of it was irrelevant. Both of those things are important, not just the second part.
Exactly. You have to like don't do this if there's just a little bit of traffic, right? Don't do this if um, there's not a huge surge of unqualified people searching. This is really for. I mentioned how low the budget is. You mentioned, oh, that's only 150 clicks, Ryan. That's not a lot. Imagine if 120 of those are being wasted.
Yep.
Now you're really in trouble, right?
Yep.
It adds up so quick. So volume has to be huge, and there has to be a large amount of irrelevant traffic.
Yeah, I think that might get missed because if you just have irrelevant traffic, which happens very often, but also you don't have a lot of search volume, this won't work, right? Um, Understood. Got it. And also, this wasn't the first thing you did. You've done ad scheduling. You've sort of also optimized by devices. You've already identified the 15 keywords, which is very important. Which also means you've already uh, removed all negative keywords. You've sort of done all of that. So every base thing that you could do, you've done, and it still is irrelevant. So how did you
Yeah.
decide to get here? Because, for example, there's um, how did you get to know that hey, either the quality of traffic is wrong or not as good, or what was the trigger point to decide hey, let's use audiences?
The trigger point was desperation. No, I'm joking with you.
I mean, it could be.
The it could be. So the trigger point for me was I'd done these things. I felt confident. You know,
Mhm.
the keywords, like you mentioned, went through about 2 or 3 rounds of revisions after they've
Mhm.
been live, like strong revisions.
Yeah.
So we felt like it wasn't a keyword problem. And there's only so many places you could look. We felt the landing page was good. We felt the keyword was, landing page matched the keyword, matched the copy, matched the offer,
Yeah.
matched the language. There's not too many more places you can go.
Hmm.
Um, and looking at it, I had my audience's observation mode, and I was like, you know what? There seems to be a good amount of volume
Yeah.
in these audiences that I've put in here. Because sometimes your observation
Yeah.
audiences, sometimes they're big, sometimes they're nothing, like 100 impressions, great. So it was at that time where I'm like, okay, I think this audience will be large enough, just large enough to actually spend this money.
Yeah.
So how about we lean into some of these Google pre-built audiences and
Hmm.
see if we can really kind of leverage it.
Understood. So I have like two questions I'll ask. I'll start with how long would you so it's an experiment, right? And there's no guarantee it's going to work. So
Yes.
what was the point where you're like, hey, this is also not working? And at that time, do you just like shut off the or then you say, okay, this experiment's gone. Now either I figure something new out or I shut down the channel. And so what was that point that you had decided?
So I would say it was about 3 weeks into when I started targeting those audiences
Hmm.
that I was concerned at that point. I was really
Yeah.
concerned. I was because you run paid campaigns. Sometimes people don't buy off Google Ads. Now that's just a reality. I thought they would though, right? I had a strong feeling they would. It's kind of like, okay,
Yep.
people search this, people buy this way. Like
Yeah.
you know, this is not some kind of deep tech thing where people,
Hmm.
buy some other means. And so I was pretty nervous after about 3 weeks, and then once we got the first one, then I'm like, okay, that just bought me a little bit more time because it could be a fluke, right?
Yep.
Like it could just be, the black swan, right? Um,
Hmm.
So I just kind of waited. Like, can this repeat itself? Boom, get another one. Okay, does this repeat itself? Get another one. And then by about August, I felt like, okay, we're actually just going to lean into this and make this our thing. And if we underspend a little bit because the audience search volume wasn't there, we're going to be okay with that because we're not losing money on Google
Yeah.
Ads, and we could take that extra money and put it to other channels and get it to work for us there, whether it's standing up a retargeting campaign or what have you.
Yeah. Interesting. And so when you did this, did the cost per click change? Because you've limited
Not
the
really.
audience
No,
intent, right?
no. Cost per clicks were still pretty high. Cost per clicks are still like mid 30s.
Yeah, have you ever seen it rise? Because I always thought it should, but I've never seen it go up after I've restricted the audiences. Have you seen something different?
No, my generally speaking, they don't rise. I think it's just
Yeah,
because most. I just think it's because the competition might not always be doing it, and so you're kind of going against. Here's kind of here's what I think a lot of times with Google Ads. I can't predict someone else's strategy,
yep,
so even if I see another company is bidding on the keyword, I don't know their exact strategy,
yep.
and so all I can do is focus on mine. And generally speaking, it almost never results in an increase in CPC from my experience.
Yeah, same. It's good to just validate these things. Okay, perfect. So you've done this, you've made the change. Now, uh, how do you select the audiences, right? I think that's the key question. Like, which audiences do you really go after? I think that's the last one I have, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is a great question, and shout out to my old coworker Kyle, who told me about this. But the big thing to remember about Google Ads audiences is that a searcher can only be put into one of those. Now, this is not like Google Analytics. Google Analytics will put people into multiple buckets. They'll call them fashionistas and thrifters and,
Yeah.
you know, online shoppers and enterprise software, right?
Mhm.
That's why if you let Google, if you let Google Ads create your audiences for you, that's a silly thing to do because they come up with the most ridiculous thing. You know, your enterprise software buyer, loves flowers. Awesome, great.
Yeah.
Um, but he told me a long time ago, he goes, Ryan, they only put people into one of them, right?
Mhm.
So you don't want too many, you don't want too few. A lot of times people put in every single thing they can think of. They're like B2B services, B2B companies, enterprise companies, large employer. They want, they start to think of it. Your sweet spot's probably going to be around like 8. Um,
Mhm.
and really kind of you build out from the most focused to the kind of the least focused, right? So
Mhm.
that's things like um, going from retargeting to enterprise software to looking for B2B services to if you're selling a CRM, obviously CRM will be there. Um, I think there's a kind of a broad one which just looking for business services. That's kind of an all-encompassing one.
Yeah.
So I really kind of lean into those. Employer could be a really good one as well, especially if you're really good at certain industries. I haven't had too much success when I've just targeted a single industry on Google Ads. That's never really worked out for me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, build up from your product and your audience, and you'll get to about a sweet spot, maybe 8, maybe 10.
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome. No, this is actually very useful. I think so. Is there anything that I should have asked that I did not? Because it's a very niche topic, very few, or very specific. It's a very specific use case. But if you are in this, this is a game changer for you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and honestly, like I know it's a rare case, but
Mhm.
I've already come across this twice in less than 2 years. And it's like, okay, the other one was in a construction where, you know, you're the person selling the software. You're not the person building the thing. You're not the person installing the thing, but there's
Mhm.
people, So you have to cut out this huge segment of searchers.
Yeah.
So anytime you have that kind of dual, like
Intent.
huge search volume from consumers versus what you're doing, this is a game changer.
Interesting. Perfect. Is there anything else that I maybe should have asked but I missed out?
No, I don't think so. You covered it pretty good. You kind of dug in there. So I feel like we covered all of that.
Perfect. I think so. The last question is, um, so if you had to give a pitch for Refine Labs on this podcast, what would that just maybe an elevator pitch?
Elevator pitch is Refine Labs does meta demand gen for B2B companies, leveraging dark social, lowering acquisition costs, increasing revenues and pipeline. So if you're looking for people to really be a partner with you and to be part of your team to help you grow your customers, you know where to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, Ryan. We have one more podcast episode to record. So if you like this one, you should probably check that one out. Cool. Thanks again. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing me on, Ishan. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the TLDR podcast. In case you're wondering, Spear Growth is a marketing agency. We help B2B SaaS companies like yourself with ads and SEO. Check out our website at speargrowth.com. That is SPEARGROWTH.com. Just like this, every episode starts with a 1-minute summary of what we discuss. Pick the next episode to listen to based on what you can implement right away. And after you implement any of these tactics and see an impact, we'd appreciate you drop us a note on podcast@speargrowth.com.